Good morning and good afternoon, folks, and welcome to our Bridging for Democracy webinar, Building Bridges and Climbing Hills in the OC. I'm Mansi Kathuria. I use they, them pronouns. I work as a field strategy and research analyst at the Othering and Belonging Institute, and I'm going to be moderating today's event. I see a lot of folks already active in the comments, which we love to see. Please keep, sharing your thoughts throughout our time together. And if you haven't already, we'd love for you to introduce yourself in the chat, share any organizations you're with and where you're calling from today, or something that you hope to learn from this webinar. And I will pass it to my co-presenter, Miguel, to introduce himself and get us started.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon and good morning to all, wherever you are. My name is Miguel Hernandez. I am the Executive Director with OCCCCO, the Orange County Congregation Community Organization. We are based in Orange County, California, and it is a pleasure to be here with you today.
Great. Let's get our slides up. I'll go next.
So just to want to give you a little bit overview of what today's we have planned for you today. Again, it's a pleasure to be here with you. We're going to talk a little bit about what bridging for democracy is. You'll hear a little bit about OCCCCO's long bridging. You'll hear a lot about OCCCCO's long bridging work and a report back from the field. You'll also hear about Bridging for Democracy's national pilot. We'll have a panel discussion and opportunities for question and answer and how you can get involved. So hope you enjoy it. We're really excited about it, and it's great to have so many people online.
Let's go next.
A little bit about us at OCCCCO. We are a faith-rooted organization. OCCCCO develops transformational leaders within diverse, multicultural interfaith communities who together have the power to shape equitable public policy and develop belonging throughout Orange County. Our vision is for Orange County that is a community where all people belong, live, and with dignity and thrive.
Next.
So it's important to start with a little bit about what is bridging. So this is a short definition of how we see bridging. Bridging is about people coming together across real differences, racial, whether it's racial or just their background or power, not by ignoring those differences, but by naming them. It means honoring each person or group, who each person or group is, while also building something new together, a bigger, more inclusive sense of we. So what is Bridging for Democracy? Bridging for Democracy is a partnership among social justice movement organizations to develop practices and narratives for rehumanizing and rebuilding our mutual commitment to one another across deep us-them divides in U.S. society. And our Bridging for Democracy work, this is our current partners. You may recognize some of them. They're based in different places across the United States. Workers Center for Racial Justice. OCCCCO, of course, is in Orange County, California. Make the Road, Nevada. The Othering Belong Institute. The Illinois Coalition for Immigrant Refugee Rights, CHIRLA, Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, Moses metropolitan organizing strategy enabling strength. Um, so those are our current partners who are working on this particular project and initiative of Bridging for Democracy. And I'm going to pass it back to Monsi.
So, when we think about Bridging for Democracy, we're really thinking about how we can expand our universe and transform how we're approaching civic engagement work. So, a lot of times, conventional wisdom in civic engagement, electoral politics, says that if someone is against us, we take them out of our quote unquote universe or the group of people that we're talking to, reaching out to, trying to engage. And that means sometimes over time, these universes keep shrinking. We're talking to smaller and smaller groups of people and missing entire communities and geographies that we could be engaging. Bridging for Democracy is thinking about how we go back to expanding this and engaging all of those folks that, even if they don't agree with us or aren't engaged civically, are folks that we can be talking to and building with.
So, how does Bridging for Democracy is meeting this moment? As an organizer, I started organizing after I graduated from college over 30 years ago, and I think I've learned quite a bit since then. And considering this particular moment, uh, we're all pushing back against authoritarianism. And for me, this means that we have to reach across divides and build a much bigger we. And no single group can do this. That's why we at OCCO, and I think and Bridging for Democracy, we see it as a core muscle, that's critical at this moment. It for us, it allows our movement to grow, to last, and to actually build a multiracial democracy that works for everyone. To I see this as an invitation to think about bridging as the heart of organizing. It connects to me. It connects separate parts into one coordinated body, so that we can move together in shared purpose, as a movement. And that's exactly what Bridging for Democracy is doing for the field. We're offering practical tools, training scripts, and real world practices that help people actually bridge across differences and make that bigger we possible.
Thank you, Miguel. Now I want to invite in Blondie Morales, Eric Heredia, and Danielle Cruz.
Hello, everybody. My name is Blondie Morales. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the lead organizer for OCCO. And so, really quick, so Bridging for Democracy in Orange County. For me, Orange County and honestly, the world right now feels very divided. And at OCCO, we deeply believe in the power of bridging and not just bridging with people who already look like us, vote like us, or think like us, but bridging across real difference. And that's what we mean by long bridging. It's choosing to build relationships with folks who might not see themselves as part of our movement yet, or who we may not immediately agree with. And so we decided to launch OCCO's very first long bridging deep canvassing campaign in a place we've never organized before, Anaheim Hills. Can we go to the next slide, please? So why Anaheim Hills? So I often think about family. We all have that tío, primo, or family member, uncle, cousin, or family member we avoid because conversations feel hard. But when everyone avoids that person, it doesn't make the family stronger. It just makes the distance bigger. So movements work the same. They work the same way. If we only talk to people who we already agree with us, we shrink our collective power. We say Anaheim is our home, and if Anaheim is truly everyone's home, then we have to be willing to engage everyone, including communities that are different from the ones we usually organize in. And what's beautiful is that even launching this long bridging work has already created new bridges. The connection with the pastor, we connected with the pastor in the region. We partnered with the mayor's office to create an ad promoting our listening tour. And so Anaheim Hills isn't just a geography, it's a commitment to practice the kind of democracy we want to see. And this is rooted in belonging, curiosity, and relationship. Next slide, please. So when we started asking ourselves, where are we not organizing yet? And Anaheim Hills came up. This map shows a community that is less dense, wider, and wealthier than West Anaheim, and also has a large Asian community. Instead of seeing this as a barrier, we saw it as an invitation to listen, to learn, and to build relationships where we haven't before. And the real story of what that invitation looks like doesn't live in this map. It lives in the conversations at people's doors. And so I want to pass it to Mansi, Eric, and Daniel to share some of the on-the-ground stories of what long bridging has looked like in practice.
Thank you, Blandy. Yes. So Eric and Danielle were on the ground during this effort, going out and having these long bridging conversations with folks across the Anaheim Hills. So I'd love to have you both introduce yourselves and tell us more about what this looked like. You know, we want to know what the conversations were like that you were having. You have some stories for us today?
So good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Heredia, pronouns he, him. I'm the civic engagement specialist at OCCCCO. So we asked the residents of Anaheim Hills 3 questions. The first one being, what are some things about Anaheim Hills that define what it is or make it meaningful to you? The second one being, if you think about how others see your community, what do you wish they understood better? And the third one being, how do you see Anaheim Hills connected to other parts of Anaheim? And so here's what we heard from the residents in Anaheim Hills. First, when people talk about what makes Anaheim Hills feel like home, they talk about safety, quiet streets, and family life. It's a place where neighbors know each other, kids matter, and schools are a big deal. People love the hills, trees, trails, and open space. It feels green, peaceful, and rooted. Traditions like the 4th of July parade, church fairs, and block parties really anchor the community. Overall, folks described Anaheim Hills as comfortable, welcoming, and deeply connected. Second, residents really want others to understand that Anaheim Hills is more than the stereotype. They push back hard on the idea that it's just wealthy, white, or exclusive. People talked about being diverse, hardworking, and dealing with the same struggles as the rest of Anaheim, especially high housing costs, safety, and education. They want to be seen as normal people, not political labels. What really defines the area, they said, are shared values, family, neighborliness, privacy, and caring for the environment. And third, when it comes to connection with the rest of Anaheim, especially West Anaheim, the community is split. Some residents clearly see Anaheim as one city, shared schools, city services, churches, jobs, taxes, and landmarks. And others feel real distant, pointing to geography, different day-to-day realities, and contrasting environments. Some even said that Anaheim Hills feels closer to nearby cities than West Anaheim, like Yerba Linda, Villa Park, even North Tustin. And still across both views, people named shared family values, diversity, and city services as real opportunities to bridge those divides.
Thank you, Eric. Danielle, we'd love to hear from you as well.
Yeah, hi. Good morning, everyone. My name is Daniel, and I had the chance to work as a canvasser with OCCCCO. I want to share one conversation that really stayed with me. I spoke with a resident who grew up in West Anaheim and later moved to Anaheim Hills. When I asked whether he still felt connected to the rest of Anaheim, he told me really something really honest. He said that after moving to the hills, he started noticing how quickly people, both inside and outside the neighborhood, made assumptions. People think that residents of Anaheim Hills are wealthier, more conservative, or somehow different in what they believe and care about. That frustrated him because, in his experience, that just was not true. He told me he worries about the same things he always has: housing costs, safety, schools, and whether his kids will have real opportunities. To him, the division was not real. It was created by geography and labels. He felt that people rarely take the time to see residents as individuals and instead rely on stereotypes tied to where someone lives. What impacted me most was when he said this was the first time he felt someone was intentionally trying to break those assumptions. He appreciated that the conversation was not about politics or judgments, but about shared experiences and values. That moment really clicked on me because I think this work matters when we give people space to tell their own story and we replace stereotypes with real human experiences. Even when residents don't feel connected to the community at first, the conversation itself becomes a step toward connection. And that's how real bridges start to form, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. Yeah, that's a really powerful story, getting to, actually hear all the complexities of this person's experience and how, he sees this perceived divide between Anaheim Hills and West Anaheim. And thank you for being part of this project and being out there, going door to door, having these long bridging conversations. I'm curious for y'all, Eric and Blandy, what your reaction is to this story and the other experiences you were hearing from the field. I know Danielle shared a little bit about how this impacts him and what like really clicked for him. What about for y'all? What does this mean for you as organizers, and why does it matter for OCCCCO that you're out having these conversations or hearing these perspectives?
Um, yeah, so this impacts me as an organizer by reinforcing that active listening is one of our most important tools that we have. Instead of assuming what people believe or care about, I saw how much more effective it is to create a space for people to share their experiences and values. It helps me approach organizing with more patience, empathy, and openness. And this matters because organizing rises and falls on trust. When people feel heard, they lean in. When they feel understood, they participate. Listening turns into outreach. No, listening turns outreach into relationship, and relationship is what turns effort into impact.
I love that. Thank you. What about you, Blandy? What comes to mind for you?
Yeah, I think what surprised me the most was like how open people were when we led with curiosity instead of assumptions. I think similar to like Eric. And
Mhm.
so we went in expecting a lot of resistance, and some doors did close. But people wanted to talk. They wanted to be heard and to share their hopes and concerns for their families and for Anaheim. And I was also surprised by how canvassers bridged through who they already like are. They didn't have to change themselves. So they bridged as mothers, talking with other parents, as students, talking about stress and the future, even like through sports, finding common ground through that. And those small human connections shifted conversations in very powerful ways. And it reminded me that people are more complex than labels, and that long bridging doesn't just change who we who we talk to; it changes how we show up. So
Thank you, Blandy. Yeah, I love where you ended that. And I think that's so powerful that it changes how we show up. Because I think this work is transformative, and that's really at the heart of this project, right? Is mutually humanizing people and what that changes. I really glad we led with stories this morning because, like I said, I think that is what this project is built around, and we wanted to center that here too. But we will come back. Eric, I'd want to invite you back in to share a little bit more about now what this looked like across the field and what some of your metrics were in the ways that we traditionally approach canvassing. And so we can kind of better understand the scope of your program and who you were out talking to.
During our long bridging canvassing in Anaheim Hills, we knocked on 2,724 doors and had 254 real one-on-one conversations with residents. Most of those conversations were 5 to 9 minutes, but they were meaningful. In several cases, people talked for much longer because they wanted to go deeper. What really stood out was how many residents said they'd be open to talking again when we come back. That tells us something important, that even in our shorter conversations, when they're grounded in respect and care, they can build trust and open the door to ongoing connection across Anaheim Hills.
Amazing. That's so many rich conversations that you were able to have, and love seeing these numbers of how many folks found this valuable enough that they're willing to have a conversation like this with you in the future. I want to highlight another element of your program, which is these digital ads that you are running through part of your canvas. And some of this is built on the wisdom we've learned from the previous Long Bridge canvassing pilots that we led in 2024, where sometimes canvassers had really challenging experiences in other states of having the police called on them, having people in the neighborhood be suspicious of them, post like ring camera photos, and in one instance, a group in Nevada having to get ID badges from the local police station to be allowed to continue canvassing. So thinking about the challenges that canvassers faced and also how to maximize our time in the field and our impact, we worked together on this new approach to help, as we say, warm up the doors, kind of put this on people's radar that folks from OCCCCO were going to be coming by, that they're really there to listen and bridge with people and hear about their experience of Anaheim Hills. Can you tell me more about these digital ads and what you learned from them?
Like you said, we did run ads alongside the canvassing. The idea was pretty simple. We wanted to warm up the doors before our canvassers ever knocked. If folks already had seen the message online, we'd hope they'd be more open, more curious, and less guarded when a real person showed up. We treated the ads as an extra bridging touch point, not just outreach, but another way to invite people into a bigger we before the conversation even started. And our experience is promising. Once the ads were running, canvassers noticed a real shift. People were warmer right out the gate, more willing to talk, more engaged, and less skeptical at the start of the conversation. It suggests that digital ads don't replace relational work, but they may support it by setting the tone and opening the door just a little wider.
That's beautiful. I like that of, obviously not going to replace the relational work, but just opening the door a little wider. Absolutely. And we have some examples here for you to actually see what they look like, including this video from the mayor. So 2 of the ads we ran were static ads. You see one here featuring one of the OCCCCO canvassers that says the Anaheim Hills listening tour is coming to you, with this smiling, welcoming face. And then we wanted to share with you one of the video ads that ran through this as well.
Anaheim Mayor Ashley Aiken here. We are working with our friends at OCCCO to talk to residents, go door to door, and find out what are your priorities? What makes Anaheim special to you? What would you like to see in your city? So if you see our friends from OCCCO out in your neighborhood this week, please take a moment to stop, share your thoughts, because we want to hear from you.
Yeah, can you share a little bit about that too? How did we end up having this video from the mayor?
So our coworker Maritza actually reached out for us, and that's how we were able to get that video from her.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can see that really being something, people respond to, and again, just helps build like not only awareness but credibility for this work, and hopefully helping people orient towards this really being a listening tour and an opportunity to share what they're experiencing and feeling in their neighborhoods and really be heard in that. So thank you to all of you and the larger OCCCO team, especially your other 5 canvassers, for all of this incredible work. I have some more questions for y'all in a few minutes to dig deeper into what you learned and what the long bridging means for OCCCO and what comes next. But we're going to pivot first and invite in Dewan Bland from Moses in Michigan to share a little bit more context nationally about our Bridging for Democracy work, our 2024 pilots, and about the work that he's leading in Michigan.
Thank you for that. So my name is Dewan Bland. I'm lead organizer at Moses, which organizes just faith community organizing within the Southeast region of Michigan, primarily in Detroit. And we've been a part of this this work around bridging kind of since it became an idea. So in 2023, partners actually came together to talk about addressing threats to democracy, and organizers on the ground, and not just organizers, but our grassroots leaders, felt that people had a real sense that democracy was in trouble. And we also found through different rhetoric and occurrences over the past couple of election cycles that wasn't just something that people with our shared values had. We saw that across the political spectrum, that people felt like there were big threats to democracy. We also saw this decline in trust in government in elections, plus increasing fragmentation. So again, that wasn't something that belonged to a specific political ideology, but across the spectrum, people had this decline in trust in government in elections. For those of you who may remember, in 2020, Detroit actually became one of the most controversial places during the 2020 presidential election. And we actually had a building full of folks trying to count votes, in a building people outside the building trying to stop the votes from being counted. And both sides of that, those people were literally separated by a glass wall. And both sides of people, both parties on both sides of the wall, both believed that the election was being stolen or attempted to be stolen. And they couldn't be further apart on their political ideology, but they both believed the same thing to be true. And it increased fragmentation, right? There was more breaking of relationship and communities based on the political climate than ever before. And we just saw more segmentation and the we becoming smaller. People felt like they couldn't talk to each other across lines of difference. And those lines of differences became even more. So you had people who typically thought that they were on the same side, whether they thought about that in terms politically or thought about it in terms of social justice, even finding themselves not being able to communicate with each other because we just start drawing harder lines in the sand for people and creating way more us versus them scenarios as the political climate began to be more intense. And then if authoritarianism is built on dehumanization, we began this thinking about how do we create a practice that is focused on our humanity. So one of the end results of all of the top three things that I already discussed is that it was only legitimized, and the authoritarian regime was only legitimized if there is a dehumanization of the people that we used to see as brothers and sisters, neighbors, folks we share community with. And the political climate has heightened that dehumanization, and it became more about beliefs, talking points, policies, and practice, and less about people and less about us seeing the human in each other. So we can go to the next slide. So ICER, Coalition of Human Immigrants' Rights, Make the Road Nevada, Moses, the Working Center for Racial Justice, OCCCCO. We ran these pilot programs. I used to joke with our folks back in Detroit when they were looking for experts on the subject that they were the experts because they were the pilot. And we had various tactics. ICER, Make the Road, and a few other folks, as you've heard before, did door-to-door canvassing. Moses chose an institution-based model of having a conversation where we're actually organizing congregations to have these conversations because we believe that political divide exists within congregations and people just aren't talking about it. So we all had, we tried a few different tactics on how to have these bridging conversations and what made sense for our organizations. And here are some of the numbers that we reached through these pilot programs in 2024. So as you see, we were in 6 states, Michigan, Georgia, Tennessee, rural Nevada, Southwest Chicago, Illinois, and then Wisconsin. And these are the number of folks that we had conversation with. Can we go to the next slide? So we had almost 2,100 deep conversations. We knocked on over 24,000 doors. And Moses and our pilot brought together 5 congregations who trained up 30 people on how to have these bridging conversations. And in 2024, we had 2 of those dinner conversations with our congregations, and have since had many other conversations with the congregations. So any Q&A on pilots, you can put it in the chat. And while we're waiting on the Q&A, I could talk a little bit more about what Moses was doing. So Moses is a traditionally Black-led organization. We organize the faith community, but also labor unions, block clubs, even people who don't typically identify as people of faith. And we organize these congregations in Livonia, Michigan. And for those who aren't familiar with Michigan or southeast region of Michigan, Livonia is historically a sundown town. Livonia first celebrated Martin Luther King Day in 2023. So to have a Black-led organization begin to do some organizing work in Livonia was us branching out to this, to broaden our circle of who is we. I think we might have some Detroit people in the chat. What up, though, to all of my Detroit people? So we actually created this structure. We did a World Cafe style with our dinner within our churches. And we actually created this structure where the pastors recruited people who are going to be facilitators within their congregation. They actually identify people who are going to be a part of the conversation. And one of the parameters was the people couldn't be completely bought into either side of the political spectrum, but they were actually people who were kind of just wrestling with the tension. And so the dinner got them to begin to have conversations that reflected on the moment that they were in. And what we found is a lot of people, before they came to that dinner, was in a moment of isolation, trying to make sense of the political climate that they were living in, and felt like they had nowhere to actually go to talk about this thing. And so they began to unpack that in a way that they didn't have. And after the last election, people was losing relationships with family members and some of their closest friends. We also found that people had assumptions of what they thought the conversation was going to be about, and assumptions about how they thought the people in the room were going to be. And so our first bridging was strictly around political ideology. There wasn't that much of a racial or a generational diversity, even though that's beginning to be built in. And so what I found is that the more that we have been doing these dinners with the Livonia churches, we are getting people from the spectrum of political ideology to actually come together and create some shared language around common values and visions that they can see themselves organizing together and building a community. And I thought it was very interesting that these people who show up to this building together every Sunday, some of them for decades felt isolated in this building where we assumed community would be. And so I think that's another consequence of the political climate that we're in, is this deterioration of community, even the places where we assume that community will exist. So I'm gonna pause right there. Let me see if there's any questions. So the initial generational divide, it was mainly Gen X and boomers, and you might have had some millennials sprinkled in. I think the last one I attended, we've had high schoolers, college age folks, all the way up to boomers. So the generational divide is growing within the conversations, and it's, I think, changing the dynamic of the conversations. And the youth who are participating are giving their full voice and opinion, and not shying away from the hard conversations. So that's also good. So are there examples of long bridging work being led by? I don't have an answer to that one in particular. Oh, and all of these pastors who we are organizing were part of the Lutheran Church. They've also since then began to hold sessions to their conference of church and try to have begun to recruit more Lutheran congregations to be a part of it. I think there's another question. Group bridging dialogues at faith communities, campuses, and municipalities reduce animosity and more peace building on polarized topics. Are your cohorts like the same people coming together for multiple conversations over X months? Okay. So so the our institutional based bridging, we are expanding who's a part of it. So we are also having reached out to folks in the Dearborn community to be a part of our bridging work, which adds a completely different dynamic to it. As some of you may know, Dearborn, Michigan made a lot of national headlines over the last election cycle. It was seen as one of the capitals for the uncommitted movement. And truthfully, just in the Metro Detroit area, that was a moment of breaking. And so we think it's a big opportunity do some bridging work, and a part of I think is a big opportunity to do some bridging work is because no one has the full side, the full perspective of the stories and experience of what went down in the 2024 election. But there was a lot of fingers pointed, a lot of relationships broken, and we believe that that creates an opportunity to bridge. And yes, all of the things, I'm answering this question about the toolkit, all of these things that we've been testing, we have been putting together in documents. I don't know if we have like a formal toolkit, because some of the stuff is still just being tested and evaluated as we go.
Yeah, absolutely. We keep, building on our tools and practices, but we do have toolkits for the long bridge canvassing work and what Dewan is talking about, these community-based bridging conversations that we are happy to share with folks. And please keep the questions coming in the chat. We'll have a little bit more time for Q&A after our next section. And thank you, Dewan, for all of the work you're leading in Michigan and, sharing that with us today, even as it's growing and evolving in real time. So I have more questions for you, but want to invite Blandy and Eric from OCCO back to the stage so we can all kind of chat about some of the, lessons we've been learning from doing this bridging work for 2 years now, and hopefully get to answer some of the questions I'm starting to see come through the chat. But again, please feel free to keep sharing. And as we're getting situated, I also want to invite people in the chat to give us your thoughts about why you think bridging is important and what skills does it help us build. So what do you think we can learn or practice through bridging that's valuable? And I'm going to ask our panelists the same question in a little bit, so you'll get to hear their responses too, but I'm really curious to hear from folks watching and engaging with us as well, what your perspective is. And it's okay if you're still skeptical. We welcome that. I think grappling with these tensions that we feel is a really important part of our work that we'll address a little bit too. But I want to start with hearing from the three of y'all, what has surprised you most from your long bridging work? And I think, Blandy, I heard you start to talk about this a little bit earlier of having that experience in Anaheim Hills of this is, going better than expected, and what things may have been surprising in that. So I'm going to ask you to start with us since you've already touched on this a little bit.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Monsi. So I think something else that surprised me was how much possibility exists on the other side of discomfort. There are moments when conversations felt awkward, slow, or uncertain. But when we stayed present and kept listening, these moments often opened into something meaningful and beautiful. I was surprised by how often people said things like, "No one has ever asked me that before," or "Thanks for listening. I thought you wanted something," things like that. And so it showed me that long bridging isn't about having the perfect words. It's about being willing to just stay in relationship. And how this work reshaped our understanding of power. Power isn't just in numbers or turnout. It's in trust. It's in repeated human contact. It's in showing up in places where we haven't before, and being willing to be changed by what we learn. So long bridging reminded me that democracy is built door by door, conversation by conversation, and relationship by relationship.
Thank you. Yes, that's beautiful. Eric, do you want to jump in on this question at all?
Yeah. So what surprised me the most was how possible and how meaningful these conversations across differences actually are. Going into this campaign, I was honestly nervous. I expected more pushback and more difficult interactions, and I was concerned about what canvassers might face at the door. Based on past experiences, I assume many people wouldn't want to engage or would immediately shut down the conversation. But that expectation didn't hold up. Very quickly, it became clear that many residents were open, not just to quick exchanges, but to real conversations. What stood out most was that openness showed up even when there were differences in views. Instead of conflict, we found thoughtfulness and willingness to engage. And that shifted my perspective. It showed me that active listening and respect don't just open doors, they open trust.
Yes. Ron.
Yeah, I will add that we make a lot of strong judgments with the assumption that we have shared understanding of certain language and concepts that we use. So in our last bridging conversation, we just had people dream up their ideal community using just the words democracy, safety, and freedom. And it was very clear that folks hadn't really thought about the implications of what they mean when they talk about democracy, safety, and freedom. And yet we've been creating all of these breaks and making very strong judgments about our neighbors and the people we share space with. And we're not even thinking about these things the same way. So what do you mean by that goes a long way.
Yes, that's so real. And, you're kind of touching on how this is shifting our approach or sometimes the ways we're used to doing things or even thinking about things, right? These assumptions that we all have. One thing that stood out to me when we started planning the Long Bridge canvassing in the Anaheim Hills is talking about what our impression of the Anaheim Hills was. And a lot of the usual, stereotypes coming up of who lives there, what people might be like. And that every week Eric would be like, oh my God, it's going so much better than expected. We're actually having all these amazing moments of connection. And just how transformative that is. So yeah, what do you mean by that is a perfect place to start. And, along those lines, what is Long Bridging offering you that is different than how you've been approaching organizing, or again, what some of the conventional wisdom is around organizing, and why do you think we need this right now? Like, bring us into the moment and why it's worth investing in this when we are facing crises on so many fronts. Does anyone want to start?
Yeah, I can start.
Perfect.
I think starting from the just acknowledging the fact that we don't have a big enough we to win the moment right now. And organizing has evolved so much, even since I started in 2015. The issues are more complicated. The crises seem almost every other week, and organizers are used to 6 to 8 week campaigns of us causing some drama, getting some yeses, and celebrating. And that's just not the moment that we're in. And I think we just need a bigger circle of we and a smaller circle of them. And hopefully one day we get to a point where there is no them. It's just all us. And so just for us, we probably wouldn't be in Livonia or Brighton and some of these other places. And it's also it helped us acknowledge how many people we've kind of written off as being a part of our movement and moment because we didn't take the time to bridge and build relationships there.
Thank you. Blandy, can we go to you next?
Yeah, of course. I totally agree with Duan. I think traditionally a lot of organizing focuses on mobilizing people who we already agree with, or we think we can move. But long bridging is different, and this is about expanding who we consider as a part of us. Like they once said, the bigger we, right? So it prioritizes relationships before alignment, listening before persuading, and humanity before strategy. So instead of starting with, here's what you need, or here's what we need you to support with, we start with, tell me your life. What are your hopes and dreams, and what kind of community do you want to live in? And this shift matters right now because polarization is winning. And people are being taught to fear each other, to dehumanize each other, and to retreat into corners. And so long bridging interrupts that. It helps us practice a democracy we're fighting for, one rooted in belonging, dignity, and shared responsibility. And so in Anaheim, or if Anaheim is truly our home and Orange County is truly our home, then organizing has to be big enough to hold people we don't yet understand. So long bridging gives us a way to build the bigger we that Day One was talking about.
Oh, thank you. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
Long bridging offers a shift from persuasion first organizing to relationship first organizing. Instead of starting with messaging, positions, or quick asks, it starts with deep listening, trust building, and understanding people. It focuses on dialogue over debate and connection over conversion. The goal isn't to win an argument; it's to build bridges across differences. Traditional organizing often prioritizes turnout, agreement, or immediate alignment. Long bridging prioritizes understanding, dignity, and shared humanity first, knowing that long-term engagement grows from trust, not pressure. I think this is especially needed right now because people are more divided, more skeptical, more tuned out of traditional outreach. Many communities feel labeled, talked at, or misunderstood. Long bridging meets that moment by slowing down the interaction and creating space where people feel heard instead of targeted. Long bridging gives us a way to reach people without escalating conflict and to organize in a way that is more resilient, more human, and more sustainable.
Thanks, y'all. I'm really glad I can go watch this later because I have an urge to like take notes while you're talking and just capture some of these nuggets you shared. I think a kind of sentiment I heard from all three of you, but Blandy, I love how you captured humanity before strategy, which I think would also be a great tagline for Bridging for Democracy. Yeah. Dewan, I have a question for you specifically. I know recently you brought some of this content and training from Bridging for Democracy to a group of organizers from across the country, and want to hear what that experience was like and how do you see other organizers and folks leading civic engagement work thinking about and grappling with these ideas of bridging and where it fits into this moment, and again, what are some of those tensions that we're facing right now?
Yeah, it was interesting to host a session in front of a group of organizers, and it was, organizers who that might have been their fourth day on the job or their 33rd year of organizing. And as I mentioned before, organizers are used to getting into some really good fights. We're gonna get a group of people together. We got a clear target. That can either be a problem or champion for us and to get it done. So I think one of the tensions is this is slowing down the natural pace of our organizing. And organizing already at its core, relationships are the foundation of it, but it's investing more time into relationship building without this need for direct action. Also think one of the things that I've heard, one of the struggles was a lot of organizers saw it as a tool to reconcile broken relationships, where we've had a lot of conversation about expanding it to new relationships that we hadn't traditionally thought of. So they added that wrinkle. And as far as one of the things we teach is one of the reasons why we do like direct actions, because you have to have the courage to somebody and make them accountable to it. Yes. The other thing is you have to also have the courage to depolarize people. And like the world outside is never as bad as it is on the news and social media. And it brought me back to a place. So I live in Dearborn, Michigan. And I remember in the middle of the George Floyd uprising, I wasn't outside before then. I was actually like listening to all the COVID rules. But I had this like real tension of walking out my door and just like walking to the grocery store. Because you let the media and social media tell it, the streets were on fire everywhere. And I got outside, and the neighbor who cuts his grass every week and stops and asks me how my week is going was just doing the same thing that he's been doing every week. And we had that moment to have a conversation. And so I think the other thing organizers was wrestling with is how do they use this bridging as a way to, even in the midst of our anxiety around how polarized the world is, to stop and be human with people. And that just takes a lot of vulnerability. But what I will end with is a lot of folks seemed excited, even if it was nervous excitement, to figure out how do we put this in our repertoire. And the other thing is, like, bridging still requires us to do all of the organizing that we've already learned to do. So we had to recruit congregations. They had to build leadership teams in their congregations. They had to actually have effective meetings and all of these things. So I don't think we are asking organizers to do something that they're not prepared to do, or our leaders. It might just be scary. And like that, I want to lift up one thing that John Powell always says. Start with the short bridges. Don't start with the devil. So we're not going to think of the person who is the most polarized from us in our ideology and start our bridging there, because I think we just set ourselves up for failure in that way.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Joanne. And, I'm glad you touched on not asking organizers to do something they're not prepared for, or that, this kind of tapping into building on existing skills and being complementary to base building even, which I think brings us right back to our skills question. I wasn't able to keep up with all of the chatter in the comments, but love seeing the activity there. And I know I saw a few responses to my question around what skills bridging helps us build. At least some things like empathy and listening, communication, preventing dehumanization. I'm sure there were a lot more, but I want to bring this question back to the three of y'all. And Eric, why don't you get us started this time? But what skills do you think long bridging helps us build?
Yeah, so I think long bridging helps us build stronger listening skills, deeper relationship building practices, and more confidence in navigating differences.
Absolutely. Blandy?
Thank you, Monty. Yeah, I mean, just like you said, the deep listening skills is very important. Hearing people without rushing to fix or convince anything. But bridging builds a muscle that we need for like the long-term change, not just like short-term wins. And so I always love this idea of curiosity, asking the real questions instead of making assumptions or, reacting to something. Story sharing. We heard from, one of our canvassers. And, shout out to Danielle and the team. Thank you for being here. But connecting through lived experience and not just talking points, I think is another skill. Humility, being open to learning and being changed. And relationship building, creating trust over time. And so these are leadership skills, they're organizing skills, and they're democracy skills, which is what we keep mentioning and uplifting now. And so long bridging isn't just about, again, like reaching new communities. It's about becoming the kind of leaders who can hold a bigger we, as we keep mentioning.
That was a really big truck, but it was clear. So I agree with everything that has been said. And for me, curiosity is also one of those skills that I think if you ask most organizers, they will say they are curious people. I think Loan Bridging even expands that. I think one of the other things is just critical thinking in a way that we may not be used to. So I'll go back to the last, dinner that we had. Someone said, we should. One of the things that's important for democracy is shared values. And someone immediately asked them, how many shared values do you need to be in community with somebody? And it was like this moment of like thinking about the implications of the things we say, even if that thing said seems to be the right answer. And I think that's always a good muscle to work and expand. And also creates uh, building, the other skill is building brave spaces that people don't have to be perfect while they're in a space, but brave enough to show up vulnerable and gracious.
Yeah, there's so much there. I I love that question. How many shared values do you need? Um, yeah, that's funny but also insightful. And I think, like, I also don't have a clear cut answer. That's a great question to ask in our bridging work and what makes that bridging possible. One thing that's come up around this question, throughout our conversation today is also, right, like not going into the bridging with a clear idea of what's going to happen, there being these new outcomes possible, right? The humanity before strategy, and then how does that shape our strategy? How does that change things? So I'm curious for y'all what how it has changed things, how it has changed your strategy, or other pieces of your work. In other words, like, what has long bridging kind of made possible, or what new ideas or opportunities have emerged from this work for you all as organizers and your organizations?
I I say we've seen more opportunities to loan bridge in other facets of our work. So one example I'll give and then pass it is we do a lot of voter engagement, and without fail, every year we have some of the church mothers trying to figure out how to get their grandsons or nieces to be a part to participate in an election. And it's usually them lecturing them about the importance of voting. And we thought, like, why don't we just have a bridging conversation, an intergenerational bridging conversation about the actual act of voting and how people are seeing that. So we just see more opportunities to use this as a tactic to further our other work.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think, for us, it's helping us explore and organize in places that we've never thought of organizing, kind of like in Anaheim Hills. But like, just to be a little bit more specific, at my hometown in Fullerton, there's always been this polarity, North versus South Fullerton. And this year, thanks to these skills that I've learned and that the team has learned, and gained, we're able to organize there now, and in such a powerful, like, transformational way that I would have never thought that we would be able to organize there, ever in my life. Since I remember, it's just been North versus South, and so now it's not like that anymore. At least we're moving towards the bigger we, through vigils, even council meetings. When we show up, it's all about bridging. It's never villainizing anybody, or thinking that they're going to be our saviors, or things like that. It's different. And I think if we believe it and we ingrain this, I always say like bridging, and or building belonging, is ingrained in my blood now, because it is. And if you do that, and if you really 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 take that to heart, you transform places and people and cultures, and that's what we've been able to do.
Yeah, just bouncing off of what Blandy said, one of the biggest new possibilities we see is expanding this approach beyond Anaheim Hills and bringing it into other cities and communities. This work showed us that long bridging can open doors to conversations and relationships that traditional outreach often misses. It creates engagement with residents who might not normally participate, and it gives us a more complete and human understanding of the communities we're organizing in.
Thank you all. Let's bring Miguel back up as well and start getting into some of the questions from the audience. I know there have been a number. One kind of theme I saw was, folks just thanking you for your work and recognizing how, challenging this can be, especially for the folks doing the bridging, the like emotional impact of that, and all that you're holding to really like be present and be able to really listen and center someone's humanity. So someone asked about self-care for canvassers, that you use to continue to do this meaningful work. What keeps you fortified for long bridge building? Maybe one or two folks want to jump in on this one. We'd love to hear how you've navigated that.
Yeah, I can tackle this question. So at the end of every day, we debrief with the canvassers, and if they do share like a conversation that was maybe like difficult or like heavy on them, we do take a pause. We do breathing exercise to ground ourselves, and we do somatic practices, and then also just reminding them the next day, like to just breathe and to take care of themselves, put themselves first, because at the end of the day, they're more important.
Yes, absolutely. And like someone had mentioned, right, we can't be bridging when there's like threats of violence or dehumanization from the other side. So also knowing when to step away, and we really empower our canvassers to put themselves first in that way and prioritize their safety and well-being, and on all fronts.
Yeah, and just to add really quick, we also are very intentional with our internal like bridging. So we do start like with a check-in, like we need to make sure that everybody is, like Eric said, grounded and ready to go. Also food, I think part of having self-care is also providing food. Some of these canvassers, or a lot of our canvassers, are either students or parents that come to canvas after a very long day. So this is not only like self-care, but it's something that is needed. It's an accessibility need. And I think that food and snacks, I just wanted to, again, it sounds something so simple, but it really goes a long way.
Food always brings people together. Yes. Yes. Dewan, there was a lot of interest when you were sharing about the work you're leading in Michigan, and like curiosities about what exactly that looks like. I saw some questions about what is the training and how are you framing these conversations and what are the questions being asked. Can you share a little bit more about those like kind of nuts and bolts pieces of leading this bridging work?
Yeah, and I think this also helps because with I've seen a few people ask, how do we define success? So in Michigan, Right. Are the clergy who started out interested in this process actually went to recruit other clergy and congregations to be a part of the process? So one way we define success is just the amount of institutions that participate in the process. Then each church actually delivers a team of people to be trained as facilitators, and those questions vary with the session. Right. So the first session, one of the questions might have been, um, what do you like most about your community? And who, when you think about that, who actually lives out the best of your community, and where do you see breaking in your community? So it's questions like that, and then also just training people on how to be curious and go deeper into those questions. Um, and one of the pastors who participated in our bridging conversation, she's now on the board of Moses. So we have just like this moving people up our engagement of leadership development. But the conversation changes and it's designed to get people to go deeper with each conversation, so they're building trust and they can take bigger risk as they're building trust.
Thank you. And thanks for bringing in that question about success. I also wanted to come back to that and, again, saw that sort of asked in different ways. So we'll bring that to the rest of y'all. Miguel, would you actually want to kick us off and talk about what success looks like for you in this bridging work and how we evaluate that?
Yeah. I think it can be difficult to think about how bridging is a powerful part of organizing. Considering that we are accustomed to thinking about in terms of large numbers, in a sense of us versus them. And having a clear issue and victory. And so we do have to shift our mindset a bit. I also want to say that bridging itself is not new, right? I think we talked about curiosity in bridging and organizers being naturally curious. I think when we're talking about bridging, it's the intentionality of the work and centering bridging, because I think as I think about what how do you define success is being able to engage people in a conversation and not expect without the expectation that you need to convince them, but with the expectation that you will learn something about them and about their humanity. And that I think happened in our canvassing in Anaheim Hills. We went in with expectations and of who the community was in Anaheim Hills, and we were surprised. We were surprised by the conversations. We were surprised about what people were saying, and I think that's success. That to know that we had some understand our own biases is really critical to being able to build this larger build a bigger tent, without the expectations that you need to convince someone or that you have to agree, right? So I think that's really important. And it's for us in OCCCCO, sometimes we glaze over the differences, generational differences, racial, social, economic. And this, I think, allows us to address those differences in a way that is healthy and generative. And so you can actually feel I think you can actually feel the change in culture, and about how we can interact. And I think an important thing to say is this doesn't mean that we don't hold each other accountable and we don't hold people accountable. It just means that we're not going to focus on dehumanizing folks. And I think that makes it a lot much more powerful and inclusive. And I think that's what we're seeing in our organization. And it doesn't happen overnight, but I think I think the more we do it, the more we're able to exercise this bridging muscle. The broader, the stronger we become, and the more leadership is being developed throughout our organization.
And I think we might have lost Vansi. Oh, there they are.
There you are.
Yes, I think I'm back. I missed, what you said, unfortunately. How the
I can just
technical
I think
lapse.
I think I could not summarize, but something that's in my head with just piggyback with what Miguel shared. I think that if long bridging is about building the bigger we, then success is when that we is actually getting bigger, even if it's small, quiet, and hard, and if it's hard to measure.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Blandy. I know we're getting close to the end of our time together, so I just wanted to open it up to final thoughts from all of y'all. Whether you want to respond to this success question or something that we haven't asked yet, something that's on your mind. Just what would you like to leave us with today? And let's start with you, Dewan.
I would say just try it. As far as bridging, try it, and be ambitious in encouraging other people to try it. So whether that's starting out, I know we have some churches, whatever organization or institution you belong with, and don't limit limit the possibilities of bridging. I think imagination plays a big part in this as well.
Yeah, just to add, be curious. We keep talking about curiosity, just be curious. There's so many different ways of bridging with folks. I talked about my tios and my primos, carne asadas, barbecues. Start there, start with things that you enjoy together. And then continue to, expand that, this idea of bridging elsewhere. And so, just again, be curious, dream big.
Eric, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'm just excited for what's next. This is a big step towards something bigger. How Miguel said, a larger we. And I'm just excited to see what's born from all of this, see all the work that we're going to continue doing and other people are going to continue doing using this long bridging. And again, just remember, active listening.
Perfect. Thank you all so much for your work and your wisdom today. Dewan, Blandy, and Eric, really appreciate y'all and for joining us this morning. And pass it to you, Miguel, in a moment to help us close out. But as we're wrapping up, folks who are still here and watching and chatting in the comments, we'd love to hear from you if you feel ready to bridge. What has maybe inspired you from our conversation today, and what lines of difference specifically are you going to bridge across? We really want you to think about your community, your context, like what it meant for OCCCO to bridge with the Anaheim Hills across these geographic and cultural and perceived social divides. So maybe there's something similar in your community, or maybe it looks totally different. And as like y'all are answering, Miguel, I'll pass it to you for closing thoughts.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's been a really pleasure to be here to share some of our work and our partnership and our collective learning. It really is a part of our collective transformation. And the question to me that keeps on coming, especially in this moment, is, how did we get here? How did we get to this point where our communities are feel like they live in fear and this point of authoritarianism? And I think about that simple, this kind of rule sometimes that we have in our families, that when our families come together, don't talk about religion or politics. And my response is like, is there a way? Is there a path forward to talk about religion and politics in a way that brings us together, that allows us to grow? And I do think I think there is. I think bridging is a response to that. That we need to be able to learn how to exercise this muscle, and I think our lack of developing this bridging muscle has brought us to this point. There's I think a lot this is the time to exercise this muscle. As folks already said, take the opportunity with that cousin, that Theo, that uncle that you may have not want to talk about to previously, and bridge. Think about the city where you live in. Just about every city that I know of has this dynamics of us versus them, north versus south, east versus west, racial divides, and think about how we can bridge across those lines. Cities are such an important part of our work right now in developing the strength to come together, to make sure our families and communities feel safe. And so it's an opportunity to reach across differences, to strengthen our communities. So like was said earlier, take small steps. You don't have to bridge with the devil. You can bridge with someone that you feel you haven't talked to in the past, and make that effort. Which groups have you not reached out to, and how can you start bridging without the expectations of necessarily agreeing or feeling that you have to come out with some kind of action step either. So humanizing and understanding, I think, will go a long way.
Thank you, Miguel. I'll just emphasize that again. It's really about the humanizing. And if, authoritarianism is built on a politic of dehumanization, then for us to oppose that, we have to put humanizing other people at the heart and center of our work. So thank you again, all. I want to uplift. Our team has shared some links in the chat for you to learn more about our work through whatever kind of avenue you prefer. We have a brand new report that just came out on this long bridging work that we led with OCCCCO in the Anaheim Hills that talks about our work with the digital ads as well. There's also a story that really kind of puts you on the ground, like some of what we shared, the experiences of canvassers, not only with OCCCCO in the Anaheim Hills, but across our 2024 pilot. So please check that out. You can kind of get a snippet of what the work and the bridging looked like in each one of these communities And then I think the first link we have shared by Tanya is for our report that came out last year that goes much more in depth into the work done across the 2024 pilots. So please take a look at those and resources on our website. And we're so happy to spend this time with all of y'all, and hope to hear about and connect about your bridging work in the months to come as well. Take care.